How
Hi.
did you like the show?
That's great.
Well, we are all super excited. I'm Yolanda Kate. I'm the Director of Public Relations for Disney Cruise Line and our other travel businesses. And I'm going to be a little bit of your tour guide this afternoon, just to kind of guide a little bit of a conversation with what we are saying is just an unrivaled assembly of creative talent that have put together the show that you just had an opportunity to see. So we're going to spend a little time talking to them. I'm going to introduce each and every one of them to you, but we want to also give you an opportunity to ask some questions about what you saw, what you experienced. We know you've had an opportunity to look a little bit at their bios, but I'm going to introduce them formally, and then we'll ask them some questions that might spur others. And I think we shared with you, you're free to take photographs, and I think someone mentioned that Gaston and I think maybe have our channeling. I think I'm Gaston bounding here, so I think we've got the same jacket going on there. So I'm going to start with the director of Beauty and the Beast, and I think it goes without saying, the mixture of technology and storytelling and a little bit of Disney magic just warms our hearts. It was incredible. So again, we can't say enough about how excited we are about this team. So starting with the director and choreographer, Connor Gallagher. Connor, just wave. Connor is the choreographer for the forthcoming Beetlejuice, which is coming to Broadway for Warner Brothers Theatrical Ventures. He also choreographed Tangled, the musical for Disney Cruise Line. How many people had a chance to see Tangled? So that's some of Connor's great work. We also have on the panel today Sarah Wordsworth.
Yep.
Sorry, I always do that to you,
That's
Sarah.
okay.
Sarah is the co-writer and creator of In Transit, Broadway's first a cappella musical. So you can see this team is highly decorated. She made her Disney Cruise Line writing debut with Frozen, a music spectacular. And some of you may have had an opportunity to join us to see that as well. If you thought the sets were fantastic, that is the work of Jason Sherwood, also joining us on the panel. He is a Drama Desk Award nominee, and his recent designs included The Chainsmokers on Saturday Night Live, New York Theater Workshop, and New York Fashion Week. He previously also designed for us on Frozen, a music spectacular for Disney Cruise Line. And then last but certainly not least, I talked a little bit about the technology that you saw in the theater. Responsible for projection and the incredible video design that you saw today, Aaron Ryan. And Aaron is a two-time Drama Desk Award winner for his designs with Anastasia and A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder on Broadway. He also designed Tangled, the musical, and Frozen, a musical spectacular for Disney Cruise Line. So welcome our panelists, and let's give them another round of applause. So because we're a small group in the theater, we're going to allow you just to kind of raise your hands and we'll go through questions, but I will start with the first. And Connor, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. So we talked a little bit about the fact that you're a director and a choreographer. Apparently there was obviously great dancing, great dance numbers, and just the feel of this production is just incredible, being inspired by the live action film. How did those two disciplines inspire the work and the creative process going into Beauty and the Beast? Can you share with the group?
Yeah, sure. So when you're compacting a story like Beauty and the Beast, especially a 2.5-hour film, into 70 minutes, you want to be able to get the emotional arc of all these characters, especially in this version we follow the objects a lot more closely, and then be able to transition from location to location. So traditionally in a Broadway show, to bring out a set piece, these transitions would take much, much longer. And so as we all get together and sort of develop the concept using the video and the moving columns, I relied on my choreographer brain just as much as my director brain, even more so. Because even when there wasn't a dance number happening, I felt like the way we choreographed and designed all of these set pieces to move together, was me drawing on my choreographer background, and we had to be as efficient as possible setting up these locations so that we could follow the emotional arc more closely.
Absolutely. There's always some action, always some movement on the stage. Any questions? Please feel free to raise your hands as you think of them, as they percolate. Feel free to just jump in. Again, we'll do free-flowing kind of format here. But I'll keep going as you're thinking about your questions. I see them all brewing out there in your mind. So let's talk a little bit about the set design. The set was absolutely incredible. So can you talk to us a little bit, Jason, about the concept of the music box motif, right? It's a little different for Beauty and the Beast, and how that sort of came to life, and what was the process behind the set design? Can you give us some insights on that?
Yeah, absolutely. As we all sat down to first sort of discuss kind of the approach, the idea that Belle's father wasn't an inventor as we had seen in the animated feature, but that he was a music box maker and a craftsperson, and that a music box contains a story, that felt like a very sort of interesting way in to the idea that we could take a different vantage point at this particular story. So the idea that the characters, the people, the story are inside a coveted object became like a huge aspect of what we wanted to create visually on stage, to tie in the idea that we're telling a story, it's a tale as old as time, here it is, we're opening it up and then we're sharing it with you. Felt like a very intimate, very tactile, very sort of old school storytelling idea that we were able to put through kind of our contemporary sensibility as, you know, current theater artists. So the idea that the entire thing would be contained and would have an architecture that resembled itself throughout, and that we weren't sort of just bringing in big giant things that came from nowhere. The idea that we would reinvent something that you had sort of established and lived with, the architecture of the music box that he holds and then how that mirrors what's behind him, that became sort of the guiding visual principle for what we then went to create with the video and the costumes.
Great. Well, and I'll follow up on that. Did I see a hand? Go up? Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
So, with this production, in addition to the inanimate objects coming to life, the sets themselves were remarkable in terms of the backdrops and the projections. Can you talk a little bit about the technology and some of the choices and sort of bringing the entire stage to life like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were early on inspired by the new live action film, and we wanted to bring that sensibility to the stage and have it feel very, very real, and we wanted the audience to sort of feel like they could live in those places and be in these worlds. But when you combine that with sort of the grand scope of all these things, the castle, this French town, how to bring that to the stage was a challenge. So I think we wanted to utilize video. We were excited about it, but we didn't want you to feel like you were watching the movie or a movie with a bunch of actors walking around in it. So pretty early on, I mean, I remember we had lunch one day and we're really trying to hammer out like how are we going to use video and keep it in a super theatrical storytelling way, so it felt like set pieces, so it felt like you were experiencing it on a theatrical journey. And we came up with the idea that we would use video, but we would use it as though they were set pieces. So that's why things sort of turn in, like houses or buildings kind of turn in as if it was a three-dimensional set piece, or like trees slide up like it would be an old-fashioned flat. So we really tried to make this merger, sort of what Jason said, of like old school and new technology, and explore that visually, but also keep it very inherently theatrical. So it felt like a musical, not a film.
And a big part of that, if I can jump in, was sort of a dimensionality aspect, which is something that Aaron's work does incredibly on its own. But if you stand a group of people in front of something that is all the way behind them, they never really feel like they're inside it per se. So the storytelling concept of a music box lent itself to the idea that video could be used in a way that we hadn't necessarily seen before in a musical, because it enveloped them. It's a panorama. From every single vantage point, every single seat in the house, you get a complete panorama view of what's happening. There's never a moment where you're looking off into a wing, which became really, really important to us and to the characters.
Question back there. You had your hand up.
So as soon as the show started, I kind of flashed back to being in the Broadhurst Theater watching Anastasia, and since you worked on both shows, what did you guys learn from that, mounting that show, that you guys were able to bring here? By the way, awesome work on both shows.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think the big piece is LED technology. What we're using now, these LED walls, have come a long way in the last few years. Video has been used in theater pretty commonly in musicals for the last 10 years or so, but the projectors, which is what we would use, and there's still great projectors on the market, but we couldn't get the level of detail and crisp clarity that the new resolution allows with these LED walls. So it just opens up a whole new world. You can now create things that you're not sure if it's physically there or if it's not. It's a play of the eye, and I think Anastasia was my first chance to really explore that. That was the highest resolution LED screen that was used at that point, and I think still is, in a musical anyway. And so this was kind of a natural extension of that. I was super excited with what I was finding with Anastasia, and sort of early on when we were doing Frozen and kind of started thinking about ways we could utilize video, but in a clever new way. It seemed like the perfect extension for it. It also gives so much flexibility. So Connor could come up with a whole new idea and a different location, and then the next day I could show it to him. And then, so it's a wonderful way to tell this story.
It looked beautiful.
Thank you.
I wanted to just bring Sarah in here to talk about the other dimension. So, to your point, this is such an epic journey, right? There's so much movement, so many scenes, so many stories within a story. Can you talk about the writing process? So, how did you condense the story of Beauty and the Beast and take it, from the inspiration from the film and kind of condense that for the stage and the writing portion of that?
Sure. Well, you sort of start these processes so long ago. We started nearly 2 years ago. So when I was brought in, the film was still in production. So even before I screened the film, I had to do my first draft of this new musical. So I had a copy of the screenplay. And at first I thought, oh boy, that's going to be a challenge. But then I embraced the words on the page, because I could really, when it's just the words, and that's your starting point, it's really a gift to be able to use them and see what are the major themes, what are the things they changed from the different versions. And then I worked very closely with the music team and with Connor and with everyone here to decide which elements, because we had to condense it, which were the elements that we were going to tell in song, what were we going to do in dance, what were we going to do scenically, all working together to tell the story so that you feel like you haven't missed a thing. And we've got some of the new songs from the score in. So it was a really fun challenge to condense it for this version.
Great. Now there's some other questions. Right here.
Obviously, choreography is something really big with the show. You're taking a very big production and putting it in a very small space. What were some of the challenges that you faced with that, and how did you guys overcome them?
Good question. Well, I think it helped that we've all had experience working for Disney Cruise Line, and specifically the footprint of the stage. So the elevators you're looking at, where the tracks are and what automation you have available to you was something that we all knew going in. So we're able to sort of choreograph this whole show. I don't know where you were sitting, you could see the lifts going up and down, but the challenges are sometimes I need to have a scene happening over here, this lift has to be down, enabling us for the next scene, and then we've got three other people over there changing costumes for the scene after that. And the challenge of doing a show on a cruise ship, you've got a lot less crew, you've got a lot less dressers, so you really have to get creative. And you think about a number like Be Our Guest, each of those actors has a base costume that they change 3 or 4 times, and they're all built and choreographed. So a lot of times we've choreographed a lot of the backstage traffic, a lot of the costume changes, the actors help each other, or they're built to to get in and get out of them very, very quickly. The onstage traffic is just as challenging as the offstage, and that's something we took into consideration while we were designing this and developing it. One other thing that we were able to do, we did a workshop of the show in New York in January, and we built a mock-up of the walls that you saw. Not all the way up, but the doors were about the same height, and it was basically just these white walls that we could project on, but we could see, do we like the size of the door? Does this feel right when we walk around this wing? We even had the wings of the theater mocked up, and that was way back in January. So we were able to say, I know it's going to take me 45 seconds to get from here to the trap. You've got to design a costume, Sarah covered, that now in that 90 seconds they have to make their next entrance, they can get in and out of this in 45 seconds without a dresser. So we had those conversations all the way through. I could show you a spreadsheet for Be Our Guest that would knock your socks off. It's wild, but it was a really fun process. If you're a detail person, and I think I know most of us are. It's fun to roll your sleeves up and attack the artistic on stage, and then go like, all right, now how do we execute this?
And choreographically, to embarrass him for a second, I think the amazing thing that Connor's done on this show was that, Sarah puts together a version of this opening number of Belle that is clearly portraying a woman who is savvy and smart, and with it, who is different than other people in this town. And then Connor puts together a number where constantly people are reconfiguring apertures and moments that isolate her, that put her in different lanes, and when they turn and flip around, Aaron then takes the video and changes perspective as well. So what it creates is this really incredible marriage between storytelling, direction, choreography, and video in a way that you can tell the story of a person who's on the outside in a way that feels subliminal and really nuanced and really sophisticated for something that we've seen from one vantage point so many times on stage before.
And I think we've said that it's arguably probably one of the largest and most ambitious productions that we brought to one of our cruise ships. So that certainly makes the point, I think, on all of these, including the beautiful costumes that are behind us. Other questions? I saw some hands. Want to get as many as we can. Go ahead, sir, please.
Hi. The puppetry, this is the third Disney Cruise Line production in 2 years, right? 2.5 years. Using that, of course, now the scale is smaller. Can you talk about the challenge of that and trying to represent which version, cartoon version from the 90s or the movie version from last year?
Yeah, we worked very closely with the film team on all the different puppets we have, talking about the Mrs. Potts from the film or the Mrs. Potts from the animated film, and what the spout should be, and all the details. And it was interesting speaking about this before the film came out, because you've got those original film images which are iconic, right? And then you're watching this film going, well, what am I really struck with in this moment? Because we had to design all this way before the film came out. So it's an interesting challenge there. And then, of course, the scale, making sure these could read in a 1,300-seat theater. Really hard to assess that when you're in a workshop or a studio. So we actually did a test in one of the theaters in Walt Disney World. Basically had foam core cutouts of different sizes of puppets and eyes, and played with colors and how they would register, because the big difference in this version as opposed to other versions is that you really follow the emotional arc of the objects more so than ever before. And if you couldn't see their faces and register the emotion, then those scenes would just die. So it's been an interesting challenge, and I think it's ongoing. We're still trying to make them better and better as we work.
Well, just as a follow on that, certainly with Lumiere, the actor portraying it, really got a lot of face time, as opposed to a horse in puppet.
Sure.
And I was wondering if that was purposefully done to let the actor shine.
Yes, I think so. Again, because you have these scenes where you're asking these actors to have to carry a lot of emotional weight, and if they're hidden behind a puppet and we don't have access to them as human beings, it's going to create a real barrier between them and the audience. So to be able to see them and experience them, sometimes you're looking at the puppet, a lot of times you're looking at the actor. And I think that's slightly different than a lot of concepts for puppetry, where you're seeing a full life-size horse, which is just as magical and exciting to see, just a slightly different concept because of the emotional weight these characters carry.
Story-wise, we need to remember that they were humans, and that they are still, their human form is still in there. And I think that all of the elements worked really beautifully together. The costume design for the characters is so beautiful, because it's this white ombre into the dark blue, and it's sort of their life being sucked out of them. And I think that we were all really thrilled with how that turned out, because the audience could connect with the characters' backstories.
Okay, we'll go back to you.
So the boy that comes out as Chip during curtain call, is he a permanent member of the cast, or was he sort of chosen as a magical moment from the audience?
He was chosen. Every night it is a different young child. So it's a guest, and we've got a whole...
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So a question for the entire panel, and by the way, for your nephews or sons or family members, if they aspire to be Chip, maybe if they're on the they will be
Is there an
chosen,
age limit?
right?
Because I meet the height requirement. So
There's a couple of you trying on
time
the...
to be for that.
That's right, that's right. I think we may have some adults additionally for that as well, right? Any of us would sign up to do it. So you asked an excellent question about the challenges. And as we were talking earlier, someone said, hey, I'm going to see if this may be the last time I'm seeing the show on board, because this work is coming to an end. You've been to Toronto, you've been in New York. Can you talk about, from each of your perspectives, what is the greatest joy or that moment that you're going to take away about being a part of this production of Beauty and the Beast, bringing it to life? It is so beautiful. But what is the greatest joy for all of you? What would you say? And Sarah, I know
that's so
I'm
easy
going
for
to
me.
Sarah because I know your
course.
daughter
That's so easy.
loves these shows.
I have a 4-year-old daughter.
Yes.
And Belle is her favorite princess, and Belle was my favorite princess. So it's so many of us. What's amazing about this particular story is he's like, tell the prom dress story. Okay, Jason. I loved Belle so much from the original animated film that I had a replica of her yellow dress made to wear to my junior prom. That picture, they finally got a picture out of me to put in fun facts on the cruise ship, so it's going to be, that picture will be somewhere. But, you know, I think that to that point, this is the story where people are going to walk into this theater and the parents have a relationship with this character and this story, and their children do now as well. So for me, the greatest joy was watching it with my daughter last night in her yellow bell dress, and I'll never forget that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think you have a relationship to this story. I mean, it's one of the first animated features I ever saw, and it was the first Broadway show I ever saw. And I think we can get like a little bit cynical and a little bit hard on ourselves, like, oh my God, the hat isn't on right, or the table didn't move fast enough, and we watch the show and we tweak out about it. But we were sitting there all in a row together, which was really special because some of these people are, you know, some of my favorite people in addition to collaborators in general. And we were all sitting there, and I looked down the aisle, and there was this little girl leant on the aisle like this, and she was utterly captivated. And I just, you know, I'm hoping for a life in the theater. So far, so good. And just seeing someone like look out and be in total awe of something that we helped make is a very, very gratifying experience. It's really special.
I think for me, the great thing about designing for Disney, in general really, and from a designer that works in technology, they're not scared of big, bold ideas. There's not another company in the world that if we had presented this first idea with these movable LED walls that were going to be in rep with other shows, they would have laughed us out of the room. And with Disney, they're like, that's crazy, okay, you know, and then they go away and we come back and we keep meeting, but they figure it out, and having the opportunity to design something so big and so bold that doesn't exist yet is incredible, and that's why I love working for Disney, and that's why I keep coming back, because it's really a honor and an exciting opportunity.
Connor?
Yeah, sure. So I remember seeing the Beauty and the Beast show at what used to be MGM Studios when I was, I don't know, 6 years old. And I remember sitting somewhere in first, second, or third row or something, and I remember a performer just looking at me and feeling sort of really, feeling very intimate and special. And I'll never forget it. You have those moments as kids that just sort of burned in your brain. That's one of them. So it was probably one of the first shows I had seen. I probably didn't even know what I was watching, but I sort of remember this magical moment. And you know, the theater here is slightly unconventional in that you don't buy a ticket for the show. The ritual of going to have a pre-theater dinner or something, you could just wander into the theater on any night. And the fact that some little kid that maybe has no interest in theater could wander in and take a seat and say, I'm going to watch 10 minutes of this, and maybe be swept away by how magical it is, by the video, by the costumes, by something, and get inspired, and that could be their introduction to theater, is really exciting to me. So to be a small part of that is the greatest joy for me.
Yeah, and I think as somebody touched on, and Sarah, my daughter, also loves Belle and Beauty and the Beast, is that if you've got grandmom and mom and dad or cousins or extended family or friends, everybody can enjoy the show that you've put together, right? It really is something for everyone. Other questions, other thoughts out there? Percolate? Yes.
Regarding the music, obviously you had a lot to work with early on, and I want to say Mrs. Potts was perfect. But how long did you work on the music? Did you start earlier than the other teams did?
The music team kind of came together about at the same time we all did. I want to just shout out, we have a fantastic music team on this show, led by Dan Stamper at Disney, our Disney support. But Matt Castle and Frank Galgano did the music direction and these original arrangements for us, which are just gorgeous. And we had to work with all of the scores. So we could pull from the Broadway score, we could pull from this new film and from the original animated. But what's so amazing is not only were we able to use these songs, but all of the underscoring. So there were hours and hours of discussions about how could we tell the story in the transitions, keep telling it through the musical themes. And that, for me, is such a satisfying process. So we are so blessed with this wonderful score, and I'm thrilled with the way we were able to both chop it all up and put it back together again. And it's really a stunning score.
And we also have there's quite a bit of new music in both of the dance numbers, which is written by a dance arranger named David Dabin, who also contributed to a lot of the style and the flavor of this production. So it was really amazing to meld that all together with all the versions.
Also, a secondary question. You mentioned that you did a cappella. Have you ever thought of bringing a cappella into one of the Disney shows, perhaps, in the future?
Oh boy.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things we're always doing is we're always looking at new ideas and we're looking at new opportunities to thrill our guests, like we're doing with Beauty and the Beast and Frozen and Tangled that everyone's worked on. So it's an ongoing process. We're always looking for new and exciting opportunities. No plans in the future. It's fantastic.
There's a lot of acapella in the parks.
Yeah, absolutely.
The parks have a great tradition of, there's a Voices of Liberty, and there are Main Street, they've got singers acapella, so it's another theatrical tool.
Woven into the tapestry of Disney.
Yes.
You know, I would be remiss, and I know everybody will probably agree after watching it, because I was trying to sing, you know,